Type hinting in Python.
But let's say a team member now needs to go over your code because the functions that are, the utility he needs to derive is through leveraging your functions. Now, instead of him actually testing it out or using context to understand exactly what sort of inputs go inside your code and what outputs come out, you can make life much more easier for him if you specifically mention your inputs and type hint exactly what each of inputs should be, right? And if you look at this arrow syntax here with the function here, the arrow int telling us that the output of this function is also an int. So as a third party, for me, your function becomes a black box. I don't care what goes inside there because you've tested out and it works fine. I just need to know for me to leverage this function and utilize it effectively to build on my own functionality. I know it takes in 2 ints and outputs an int. So information to go with this function is an integer, and the output that's coming out of this function is integer, making my life much more easier. And just reading the first line clarifies everything for me in regards to this code. Now that we understand the second scenario in which we implement type hinting, the third is basically that we need to go over another situation, which is type hinting for containers. Now, mostly we have in the variable in the first document that I showed you, it covered the fundamental data types that are present in every programming languages, namely string, int, float, and bool. And if life was that simple, we would be done with type hinting because we've covered how it's done, implemented in functions and everything. But again, programming is not that simple because we have certain data types that are different, that are not exactly primary data types like string, ints, floats, and bools. We have data types like dictionaries. We have data types like lists. We have data types like arrays. We have data types like tuples. In Python specific case, we have dictionaries, tuples, and lists. Concurrently, we can club them and call them containers. These are container data types. So how do we leverage type hinting in container data types? Our third file would illustrate exactly how you can use type hinting within container data types, namely lists, tuples, and dictionaries. If you look at my code here, first thing we need to do is import functions related to list, tuple, and dictionaries from the typing module. Now, a quick recap from the start of this video is that the typing module is a module introduced in Python post 3.5, Python 3.5, that helps developers use type hinting within their code. And again, it scores the importance of type hinting for us because a specific built-in module was built for Python to help with type hinting, which implies the importance of how much type hinting has become an important part of the Python developers in the professional environment today. So now that we have these three functions, lists, tuples, and dictionaries from the typing module, how do we implement them? If you can look at that on line 3. We have implemented a function called process list. The input value is an input list. That is exactly how a normal function should work. After that, though, we're using the colon to indicate the type hinting part of this code, where we use the list function that we imported from typing and define that the input value we expect for this is a list, and this list has integer values within that, right? So this is how we clarify the input values for this function. It's a list with integer values. And the output here with the arrow function is also a list, but this time with a string values within it. So again, pause the video, go over this multiple times to get yourself familiar with how type hinting works with uh, container types within Python, and just get yourself familiar with it. So the first step to internalizing any concept in any programming language is to actually understand the purpose of it, and then to see it practically coded out in front of you. If you look at line 7, and here we define another function, combine tuple, but here we, instead of list, we're working with tuples. So of the first variable, input variable within this function t1, using type hinting syntax, we define it that it's a tuple. Again, we are using the tuple function that we imported from the typing module. So we indicate that t1 input is a tuple. This tuple has two values, one value being an int and the other value being a string. So basically what we're telling a third party through this is that the first variable of this function is a tuple, which has two values, and one value is an int and the other a string. A string. And T2, we also do the same thing. We define it as a tuple with a float value and a string value. If I drag the screen to the left, you'll see that with an arrow function, we define that the output of this function should be a dictionary, which has one value string, and the key should be a string, and the value should be a tuple. So basically, if you pause the screen right now and earlier and go over all of this, you should be able to understand exactly how this type hinting process works within container types. We've discussed how type hinting works in variables. We've shown how type hinting works in functions. And then we've shown how type hinting works for container aspects, container data types within functions. So we've discussed all plausible ways how we can implement type hinting in different ways within the code that we've shown here. So take some time, go over the screen, pause it, go over the syntax, and get familiarized with that. Now that we have discussed type hinting in container context, another aspect is union type hinting. Now, most people probably don't want to use a single data type, or create a reference or documentation just says that this input is just going to be a single data type of this and this. That's probably a very rare case. In most cases, it would be like the input data type or this variable could be this, or the input to this function could be string or integer or float or bool, right? And the output could be either one of these four as well. So how do we do that? For that, we use something called union function from the typing module. So on line 1, we import union from the typing module, and on line 3, if you look at our code, we define the input data with the union function, which includes 3 values: int, float, and string. So if you pay attention to the screen here for union, you'll notice union basically tells or hints that the value here could either be an int, float, or string.